I'm here with Gunnar from Nightmare on Dream Street podcast. He's storyteller, creator, creative. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, that's really kind of you. I think the nature of your podcast, of your stories, I do want to thank you really for doing this because you are so open in the way you present them, and that's really my first question, really, which is, as the podcast is stories from your own personal nightmares, your own personal dreams, how does it feel knowing that you're sharing those intimate moments with people like me? How that's the first question that really popped into my head, because I was like, how do you deal with kind of sharing that?
Well, for the longest time, because I've had them since I was about 8 or 9 years old. I
Hmm.
had not sh only a few family members knew about it. And then once I started turning them into short stories to kind of use it as a catalyst for it, then I let a couple very close people read them. And then, one day I just had the idea of maybe turning them into podcast episodes. And I knew nothing about podcasting. So I researched like everyone does, got into it. And then, it's a little bit, it was nerving at first to see, you know, would anybody even like them? Would anybody enjoy them? Would anybody get anything out of it? But then I've been a guest on a couple other podcaster shows.
Hmm.
I've been reached out to by a handful of people that have said that they have very similar issues. They have night terrors that are bad. They have lucid dreams, and that they have enjoyed listening to the show just because of how open I've been and that they can relate, and it's a show they can relate to. That really is a big thing for me. That's a big touch to the heart for me.
Yeah, that must be really heartening to kind of get that response. How was that response, and how was the kind of actually process of doing the show and having that responsibility to share those dreams? Um, how has the response, your own response, been to that, in terms of, has it been as you expected? Are you okay just kind of putting it out there and then it's out there, and you're happy with that, or has it kind of has it been a positive experience for you personally doing it?
Uh, it's definitely been it's definitely been cathartic.
Hmm.
I have them, and then I wake up when I have them, and then I will instantly jot them down in the middle of the night. Just a baseline, just a sentence or two,
Yeah.
and then I will write the story the next day, and then I will go into it, do my whole process of creating the imagery, creating the sound effects, the music, the editing, everything like that, and then putting it out there. At first, with the first few stories that I put out there, I was a little bit nervous,
Sure.
um, but now it's not so much as nerve. It's just, hey, there's people out there that like it. There's people out there that probably don't, and
Yeah,
I'm
well, I
fine with
certainly like it.
that.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, you have to accept that, I guess, with any medium, don't you? That you're looking for that audience, um, uh, and that audience will be quite diverse, and everybody will have a different reaction to it. But I really, it's funny you mentioned the editing and the music, and because I was going to ask you that question really about meshing together the artwork, the music. I think it's incredible. They really are incredible stories, but I think the way you bring it together in that multimedia kind of way makes it more dreamlike, more immersive. Certainly for me as a listener and a viewer, because I'm taking it in so many different ways. Talk to me a little bit how you mesh that all together, that all those creative elements, because for me, that's one of the most exciting things about watching your episodes.
So what I do is then I will so after I record the story, I'll sit there and I'll listen to it. Even after just taking out little bits of editing and making it smoothed out, I'll listen to it several times, over and over again, and then I will go through hundreds of different, you know, scores, different tempos, songs, things like that, and just kind of feel out which one I feel is best matching to that particular story.
Right.
And then I'll read through the transcription, and I'll input sound effects, and I'll spend, a couple hours sitting there just sampling sound effects for certain things and input the best one that goes with how it sounded in the dream.
Right. Because it seems so perfectly matched. It doesn't surprise me the amount of care and attention to kind of curate that and mesh those elements together. Was that something that you had in mind right from the beginning? I want to make this into, I want to invite people into my dreams more than just listening to me read them. I want them to kind of feel like they are there too.
Yeah, I wanted to make it, and I'm still learning every day, every week. I
Hmm.
wanted to make it a very immersive experience and my wife and I talked about it on a couple episodes. It's very lucid and it's very immersive. So with my night terror specifically, it everything feels real. I can smell things. I can remember how things felt. I can hear things. I can feel something standing behind me.
Wow.
Everything feels very real. So then eventually, once I had 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it becomes difficult because then even if ones that were very minor, not so much over the top where I can tell that they were night terrors,
Hmm.
some of them are even just minor of, if I had a dream where I was walking into my dining room as a child and the lights were flickering on and off, but nobody was in there with me. It's difficult to tell sometimes if that was actually just a dream or if that actually happened.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And obviously over time, memories can kind of take on new forms, really, can't they? As well.
Yeah, it definitely plays with your mind a bit.
I'm sure. And with it being so personal and your memories and your things, um, I'm really kind of interested in how collaborative you've been as well, because there are the listener tales. I particularly like the Grady sisters episode. I really enjoyed your Q&A with Anna. I thought that was really opened up a lot of the questions that I wanted to kind of know straight away when getting into your project as a new listener. I thought that was really good. I got a lot out of that. How does it feel, kind of being collaborative with something that is so personal? Some things that obviously have been difficult. Obviously, letting in family members might be a bit different than letting in listeners, but how has that been? Kind of becoming a collaborative, having that sort of collaborative approach to what you're doing.
Uh, I actually find it a bit easier
Hmm.
to be collaborative with other podcasters or show hosts or other creatives, because they, at least the ones that listen to my show or reach out to me and collaborate with me about my show, have somewhat of an understanding, or
Hmm.
have experienced something like that themselves, or know somebody that has a similar condition, than letting in a family member. Because some family members, they just they'll look at me like I'm crazy. They don't fully understand. They don't really know a lot about it. The Q&A episode, I was a little bit nervous doing. It was Anna's idea. Um, but then, I just have the mindset of, this is a creative outlet for me
Hmm.
because I've had a few close people read the short stories that I've written over a good chunk of my life,
Hmm.
and they've all told me that these are fantastic. You could make a novel out of these. You could create, and get these published, and that's obviously its own hoops to jump through to do something like that. But I just even have the mindset, if there's people out there that have similar conditions like mine, that can get anything out of it, that can even just reach out to me and have someone to talk to
Yeah.
about theirs, and maybe just discuss, what they think might be the meaning of behind something. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always been very upfront with that, about the show. Is, if our listeners, if you have any stories of your own, if you'd like to talk about a dream that you had or experience that you had, send us an email, send us a message on our Facebook. It's just myself and Anna that
Hmm.
manage our Facebook. You can always leave us something on our website. So it's more so just, if I know that someone is listening to the show and they can get something out of it, that's a win for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I feel like with the Q&A episode particularly, I was kind of learning through Anna learning as she was asking you those questions. So like a lot of the questions I think were things that obviously she wanted to know, and obviously some of them she knew already and she was kind of being the listener by proxy, but some of them were brand new kind of things that to her as well. So I found that really eye opening and interesting. And like I say, collaborating and accepting other people and the way that they're feeling, it's a service, isn't it? It's helping people while also creating art, which is, you know, a really edifying, lovely thing to do. Um, I'm kind of interested in the sort of influences, either intentional or just through just seeping into you through things you've read and movies you've watched, and kind of because the Sunset Theatre got me thinking, that almost like movies turning into nightmares. Have movies of horror movies or any movies that you've watched now as a child, do you think they influenced your imagination, or they influenced things you had irrational fears of, or they were just kind of the not the soundtrack, but maybe the soundtrack, the kind of visual soundtrack to your childhood? Like, what effect has movies had have movies had on your writing, your creativity?
Um, when I was a kid, I didn't really have, because I always had a connection to movies. I spent a lot of time by myself, as a child. Um, my older brother, he got sick and was in the hospital for about 5 or 6 years. So
Right,
it was just me and my brother and my mom. So she
right.
was at the hospital with him because she had to be. So I spent a lot of time by myself,
Mhm.
and I became very just very very self aware, very very self sustainable and reliant. But
Mhm.
I just grew a strong connection with movies, and I loved going to the theater. And the small town that we lived in had a small one screen historical theater called the Sun Theater.
Right.
And then just, I mean, the Sunset Theater, I had that night terror, just this year, uh,
Right. Oh wow,
20
so
20 years
recent.
later. Um,
Wow. How the mind works.
yeah, it's quite interesting sometimes how it'll bring up things from just your childhood. But when I was a kid, I wasn't really afraid of a lot. There wasn't horror or scary movies, anything like that that influenced, or I would watch and then have bad dreams about, or anything like that.
No, because that would be what you'd imagine a lot of kids have kind of, that's their memories of having traumatic dreams or nightmares when they were younger because of maybe coming across something that they weren't quite ready to understand or process, whether that's a movie or whether that's a book or whether it's just something that they've gone through
Right.
in their lives. So it's really interesting to think that that's not necessarily, it's more scattershot things just arriving, with no rhyme or reason, really.
Yeah, there's no necessarily like pinpoint of things that trigger them or
Mm,
can trigger anything that will manifest itself into one. It's very just my subconscious just having free reign of
yeah.
just taking things from my creativity in my mind just to take the ball and run with it, so to speak.
Yeah, no, because the reason I asked about the movies was because some of the stories they play when I'm listening to them, they play like movies. Like say for instance, like the Michigan Dog Man, local legend, it plays like a movie. That was a really interesting story. Could you tell me a little bit about that? The sort of the thought process, the Michigan Dog Man. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, so that so I came to my wife. I said, would you like to do a couple episodes? Would you like to be a part of the show? Because this is not just my creativity. This is not just me on a show or on a podcast. This is you're involved in this now.
Hmm.
And I was like, do you have anything that you'd want to share? And so she instantly went to that experience. That was an
Right,
experience that she had
right,
with her brother when they were up north, and the way that the way that my mind works is I'm a very visual person. So I think in like how there's people that think in picture and then
hmm,
people that don't. So
yeah,
when I think about something, or if I'm thinking of something or trying to remember something, it's always in a like a movie scene essentially.
right.
And that's why I always had such a deep tie to films.
Yeah, because I was kind of thinking about that. How hard it is sometimes for writers to translate their work into film because of the sort of the depth and the sort of the attention to detail that goes into writing. Um, and I guess the same goes for this is almost like a nice medium where you can go into that level of detail and you can add music and visuals and be super creative without kind of relying on someone else and how they translate that. It's all yours and your choice of collaborators. Because it got me thinking, because after some of the episodes that I listened to, I was thinking a lot about Stephen King. It made me kind of want to go and read Stephen King books. And I'm interested in if there's an author like that, or whether it's him or someone similar, that you have your relationship with other writers, and is there a kind of go-to genre or writer that you have, or do
Um,
you,
yeah,
what do you think?
for as far as writers go, Stephen King has always been my number one. He has always been an idol of mine.
Right.
Um,
Ah, okay.
my oldest brother, his name is Gage, after the kid from the Pet Cemetery.
Oh, of course.
And then growing up, my brother Gage and I, we both have been enormous Tim Burton fans as far as film goes.
Right.
So with them as idols of mine that have had a just such a strong presence for so long in my life, it's definitely I've had other listeners say like it kind of gives off a Stephen King feel to it, and I take that as a compliment. I'm not
Sure, yeah.
It's not actually intentional at all. It just comes out that way.
No, I mean it's a bit like some saying to somebody, were you influenced by Shakespeare, Oscar Wilde or something that's, when we're talking about the greatest writers of all time, I think, often it takes for somebody to pass away before we kind of accept these things. But I think Stephen King will be up there as one of those kind of capturing the moment for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
Absolute classics. Talks alongside Mark Twain and people like that. So, yeah, I would definitely take it as a compliment. I wish somebody would say that to me about my writing. So when you're recording them and when you're doing things like the Q&A or working with other people, the terrors themselves and the way you describe them in anecdotally has been it sounds horrendous in terms of like the physical, emotional drain on yourself. Has this podcast allowed you to kind of see it as a blessing or a curse? How has it helped you kind of process the way it makes you feel in terms of like, it seems really tough is what I'm saying.
It definitely can be, some of them more than others. Especially so, I released it up. I did a full episode of one that I had a couple months ago. That was Trick or Take, is what I titled it. And so that one, it's a patron only access episode. And the couple patrons that we have said that they loved it. It made them very emotional. So that episode, for instance, I've introduced to our show listeners the Whisper Man. So the Whisper Man has been a entity that has been he's been a constant since I started having them when I was 8 or 9 years old. And he essentially stole my children. And then we were out trick or treating with them, and then I had them, and then I had them run up to a house to go get the candy. And then they didn't come back after a couple minutes, and I didn't see them in the crowd of the children up at the porch of the house. I ran up to the house and asked the elderly woman and her husband sitting there, if you've seen my children. And then she responded with, I haven't seen any girls dressed in those costumes all night. Then I, frantically just start to run around the street and look around, yelling for them. And then I see them standing with their backs turned to me, holding his hands up the road a bit under a single streetlight. And then I started just sprinting towards them as fast as I could. And then right as I am getting close to them, my oldest daughter turns to me, and I can make out that, like, the words in her from her reading her lips, and she just says, "Daddy." And then when I reach, I kind of just dolphin dive to grab them, and then they disappear right as I hit the concrete.
Oh wow!
So some of them take a more emotional toll. Some of them are
Yeah,
for me to go through and write the story, because some of them, I have several dream journals on our bookshelf in our room. And some of them I haven't written the full story out of every dream that I've ever had. I write a basic paragraph just to have the premise of it, just so then if I ever do want to do it or turn it into a short story or turn it into a podcast episode, I can go back and I can just read that. I'll remember everything about it. But some of them are, every time I am going to write the story for the episode and then record the episode, listen to it over and over and do editing, add the music and add the sound effects. It's kind of like reliving it over and over. So
Yeah.
some of them take an
So,
emotional toll. After I recorded that one, Anna was in the studio with me when I was doing it, and after I did that, I felt just so emotionally drained and very just upset. And I was like, I need to just lay down for a bit. I need to put my head down. Um, I just laid there and I started crying a little bit, honestly.
yeah,
Um,
that's dealing with the trauma of it, isn't it? You know, literally is trauma. Um,
yeah,
wow.
some of them are, um, the Whisper Man has always been one that uh, really gets to me the most.
Mhm.
Because it's not randomized. When I have ones that he's in, he he knows that he makes me uneasy. Regardless of how old I am.
Yeah,
So it's very tough to do it sometimes, and to not get choked up when I'm reading the story on recording. But I've had people listen to it a couple and say they absolutely loved it. Our show's not that big, but I would love to eventually just do the show full time. That'd be wonderful. I would love to
yeah,
have that. I'd love to have that blessing to be able to do
yeah,
that. And I've collaborated with a lot of different creators and podcasters, and they've all just told me the same thing. You have great content. Your mind is so creative and so just you have just a knack for storytelling. And they've all told me the same thing. Just don't stop. Don't give up.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's it. It's a perseverance, isn't it? A lot of the time, and a bit like they were saying something like the average amount of podcasts is like three. Most they kind of peter out, or like when I was in teaching, people used to say to me, if you can make it over 3 years, then you've done really well.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
a lot of, and there was plenty of amazing people in education that I know who didn't make it to that. So a lot of it is kind of perseverance and determination and confidence in yourself. Um, it kind of that self belief, and I think you know I would implore people to get involved and listen and watch and join your group and look on your webpage, and I'll put all the links below, because it really is being allowed into a world that maybe people don't necessarily um get that opportunity to be allowed into in such a personal way. And I think, you know, I don't want to put, if you were to invite people in, if you were to kind of invite more people to join and listen and watch, and you know, what would you what would you say to them? What are the kind of I know you've just said about people's feedback and what they've really enjoyed, but what do you think people will get out of that experience personally? I can tell you what I got out of it, but what do you kind of hope that people will get out of the experience?
One, the way I look at it is, um, Wes Craven, the creator of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Um, he said the beauty and the terror of the mind is what I tied into Freddy Krueger, because he's a scary guy, but there's also art in how he gets his victims. So for me, it's, I obviously my show is horror, based for the most part, for as far as genres go. And if you're someone like me, I love horror movies. I love
Yeah,
horror novels. Um, if you're someone like me that likes, and there's a lot of people out there that like to just dive into things of that genre, even people that just do that, that don't get anything else out of it, of more the psychological,
Yeah.
I'm completely okay with that. If you just came in, listened to an episode, and you got a good chill out of it,
Yeah.
I've done my job. If you're
Yeah, for sure.
someone that then, has gotten more out of it, more in depth than that, then that's the highest compliment for me.
Yeah, that's, you're working on a textural level, and you're working on a subtextual level. I see that, and I can imagine people who would get a lot out of both of those things. So, that for me, is a really good way of describing how people should approach, or can approach, your art. Um,
Well,
you
and when
know,
I do, the Facebook Reels or the YouTube Shorts or the TikToks,
mhm,
I did start doing those. I use, a little bit of AI, and then I use, creative software on my computer to create that imagery as close as I can to what it was like in the night terrors,
right.
and just to get it as close as possible, to then put that out there. And I've had a lot of good feedback on those. Of
Yeah, they're really
this is
striking.
this is
Yeah, I've seen some.
terrifying. This is great. How did you make this? Where did you get this from? A lot of people said,
Mm.
"Well, like, where'd you get this from?" I was like, "I made it."
Yeah, and I think, like, coming from a place of it's from a dream, which is, sort of unknown. For me, if I am just enjoying something on a sort of textural, fun, scary level, I think that's what's the most scary. Is, for example, if I use Halloween as an example, when Michael Myers is essentially the shape, and we don't know why he does what he does. He just does it. For me, that's when he's really scary. Whereas, like,
Yes.
what once I know that he's looking for his sister, and he's this and he's that, I'm not checked out, but I've not got that kind of, why is this person doing it? And I think what dreams allow us to do is that we don't we can try and drill down the best we can, but we don't know for certain where that came from or what it means, which makes it even more scary. So I'd imagine people do, like you say, get some chills out of it.
It's one in when there's a couple episodes that we're gonna start doing more often is after I finish the story. Then Anna will chime in, and then we'll go into just a quick Q&A with her about that episode,
Right.
so then people can get a little bit of insider after listening to the story. And
Yeah.
she comes up with the questions on the spot, just sitting and listening to me read it.
Yeah, she's playing the voice of the listener.
Yeah, she's playing the voice of the people, and
Yeah.
then she asks me questions, and some of the questions sometimes she asks me, I just am completely stifled. I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it just raises more and more questions in my head. Well, it's like, well, I don't know why this happened, or I don't know what, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I get
But
that. I
yeah,
get that.
we were just talking about that aspect when it's movies or entities or horror icons, anything like that. It's most unsettling and most scary to people when they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for her, one of the movies that scared her the most always was The Strangers.
Right. Yeah. Oh my
And
word. Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I get that. That was a great movie."
Yeah.
And she goes, "The ending of that movie, when the lady asked them, 'Why are you doing this?' And the stranger just looks at her and just goes, 'Because you were home.'"
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
like,
That's.
"That when I the
Oh.
first time I heard that, I almost cried." Just,
Yeah.
ugh.
It's awful, isn't it? Where you're the most safe in your home, like funny games and films like that, and and also you're most safe. Really, you should feel the most safe in your own bed. And when
Yep.
if you're having dreams that make you feel unsafe, or just you're experiencing someone else sharing those things, it's that same kind of horrendous. That's why I find it hard with some home invasion films, because it literally does hit too close to home.
Yeah, and that's the psychology behind it, in films like that is the one place where you can be vulnerable or you feel the safest might not be so safe.
Yeah, and it's such a
Um,
broad spectrum. Home is such a
yeah,
broad spectrum because it can be a person, a place, a thing. What home means to you. Yeah.
and whenever I have them, because I have them a couple times every week, whenever I have them, it is always, because it's very strange because, as a lot of people know, you like how time, your 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 uh your aspect of time in a dream
Hmm.
is way faster than in real life. So it could be several hours of dream time, so to speak, but it's actually only been 2 or 3 minutes in
Yeah.
real time. So whenever I have them, it's actually right after I fall asleep, and I've been asleep for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes.
Right.
So then it's
Oh.
it's me being asleep for 5 minutes, usually tops, and then I wake up panicking, heavy breathing, not knowing where I am, kind of just looking around frantically to, and then she'll actually because I'll wake her up almost every time when I do it. She'll wake up and she'll grab my hand, um, and just tell me like you're here. This is real because it has the same feeling of everything's real because it's so lucid when I have them, so I don't know if I'm actually awake or not. Because I've had ones before where I've woken up in the night terror, but then I think I'm awake, but I'm actually not. I'm still there.
Oh my god. Right. Wow. Yeah. That's all awful. That questioning. Questioning of your kind of ground, where you're grounded, where you're based, what's going on. That's the real fear, isn't it? That kind of lack of it comes on lack of control, I guess. And you're not quite in control of where your mind is. Um,
Well,
it's
and
not
that's
it's
why,
not at rest.
we she had asked before, and we talk about it sometimes if it comes up in conversation. My biggest fear is actually, being in a coma.
Of course, yeah, yeah, that ties in, doesn't it, with the whole thing? Yeah.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I had to tell her, one day we were talking about it. I said if I'm ever in a coma and there's it's been weeks, you pull that plug. Just do me a
yeah.
favor, you pull that plug.
Wow. I mean, it's what a conversation to have, but I guess it's in the territory of what you're dealing with all the time. It's the ultimate sort of I don't know, not the apex, but like the nadir of that whole thing, really, isn't it? That's the worst case scenario, is being trapped inside those terrors.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the pinnacle for sure.
yeah, yeah, wow. So I thank you so much for being so open and sharing the processes behind what I think is one of the most creative things that I take on board when I watch you and listen to your episodes. Um, it, it's thrilling. It gets me a bit sweaty, and it also makes me think on like we said earlier on those different wavelengths, different levels. And I just encourage other people to get on board. Gunnar, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being so um, really spelling it out for me. The things that I felt I needed to know as a fan of your podcast. I think it's brilliant, and I just encourage people to get on board and get involved as well. Because it is about getting involved, isn't it? From what you're saying, it is a very collaborative approach to something that is very personal.
It's very much, and I really appreciate that. It's That's the highest honor if someone says that to me.
Oh,
If
that's
and
good.
yeah, if I always tell, you know, at the end of each of my episodes, if someone's listening, if you have a story, if you have a nightmare, a night terror, a weird dream, a kind of a supernatural experience or a weird encounter, anything like that, and you want to have it
Yeah.
featured as an episode, feel free. You can send us an email, and then I will take time and then I will deliver it into a short story in similar fashion, and then I will I will do you proud. We did the Grady sisters. We have one listener um, that's out in Europe, and Stefan, and he sent me that email with the Grady sisters, and I said, "Are you okay with this being next week's episode?" And he said, "Yeah, if you want to, if you think it's good." I said, I think it's fantastic,
Yeah, it
and
is.
I
It
would
is.
love to I'd love to do it." And
Oh,
he actually had that. He said after he got back from visiting the states down here in the South, and he was kind of just driving through the South in the countryside,
mhm.
and he said he had it after he saw these two elderly people in wicker rocking chairs in a fruit stand in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, well, maybe there was a little bit more to that. That maybe that dream was trying to tell you something.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it is. The artwork for that as well that you've done is incredible. It's really, really good, really striking. Um, I think that's a really good place to leave it because that is you're building a community, and I really the fact that you're so keen to take on those ideas as well as sharing your wonderful, frightful, um, dreams and night terrors as well. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And like I say, I'll put all the information below so that everyone can get involved and get to know you and get to know your story and get to know what you're doing, which I think is completely unique.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I really am grateful for the opportunity to come on here onto your show. It's truly a great opportunity and a pleasure for me.